Hey, how's everybody doing? Good to be with you. Thank you all for the opportunity to join me. And I want to say thank you to Rosalinda, to Rose, for welcoming us, to each of you, for taking some time to come out and to welcome a friend from another part of the border, from El Paso, Texas, where we've got some folks who know where El Paso is. Hey, thank you. Thank you for coming out. It means a lot to me to be here. And when we first launched this campaign for governor of the state of Texas, one of the very first communities that we chose to visit was this one. As you all know, yeah, you in particular, as you all know, this is not a part of the state that often gets statewide candidates or elected officials coming out, certainly not to celebrate what is amazing about this community. It's a little bit harder to get to than the rest of the state, and as I counted the DPS troopers as I drove down from Laredo, Texas today, it also makes you drive the speed limit as you come in, because it gets very expensive otherwise. But it's a place that I love, and we didn't just come here once when we launched this campaign in November. We have come back time and time again. This is actually our 4th visit to the Rio Grande Valley since we launched this campaign. And it's great to be back. We love being with you all. And I love everything about this community. First and foremost, the people who are here. There is no one more kind or stronger or more proud of their community than those who are here with us today. Those that I've met in my travels and journeys throughout the Rio Grande Valley over the last 5 years. There is a fierce pride and a desire to tell the story of this community, not just to others who live here right now, not even just to other people in the state of Texas, but to those throughout the rest of the country and the wider world beyond. You want people to see the natural beauty of this community, this river that joins and does not separate these two people and these two countries on either side of the border. You are proud of the fact that this is a community of immigrants because you understand that those who choose to come to this country do better for themselves, yes, that's for sure, but they also do better for all of us in the things that they create, that they make happen, in the success that they produce, not just for themselves, but for the community, the state, and the country beyond. This is one of the safest cities in the United States of America, as is Laredo, as is El Paso, not in spite, but because we are cities of immigrants who recognize that that is our strength and the key to our success. And yes, also our security and our safety. We understand that the border is primarily not a threat, but it is an opportunity. And we know that from what we create in this community, from the art and the culture and the music and the world-class education that we get right here in this institution. We know it in the trucks that cross in from Mexico that bring the food and the consumer goods and the auto parts and the things that our national economy depends on. More than 6 million jobs across the United States of America depend on what crosses in through our ports of entry, say at the FAR Reynosa Bridge, or in Laredo, or El Paso, or other ports of entry here in the state of Texas. More than 600,000 jobs throughout the rest of the state depend on what we are doing right here in this community. And though we never get our fair share of the resources, or the money, or the attention, or the focus, we still carry more than our fair share of the load and contribute far more than we ever get back from the state or receive from other parts of the country. And we're rightfully and understandably proud of that. But here's what we cannot stand, what we will not accept, and we will not take, and which I will not allow to happen when we win this election and I become your governor after November 8th of 2022. We will not allow people to demonize us, or vilify us, or lie about us, or say that we are something that we are not. And we know full well exactly who we are. when they see us only as a problem and as a security threat, you start to get things like walls and the activation of 10,000 members of the National Guard who are deployed not to fight a war far, far away or to respond to a hurricane or a natural disaster in this state, but to sit in those Humvees along the side of the highway. Part of a solution in search of a problem. You get things like part of a border wall that is more like a public art installation project than it is anything else. You know, the part of the wall that Greg Abbott put in, I think, was as wide as this room. You can go on this side of the wall, you can go on that side of the wall. But, hey, if he wants to look tough when he comes down to the Rio Grande Valley or to South Texas or to the Texas-Mexico border, well, I guess that's what he has to do. You get things like 100% DPS inspections on all northbound truck traffic through our international ports of entry. Now, I don't know that I need to tell anyone about what that does to our economy here, but just give me the privilege of repeating this for those who may not be on the same page. All that trade that comes through our ports of entry, that supports all these millions of jobs throughout the country, it's only possible when we have the flow of safe and legal truck traffic in through our ports, with Greg Abbott stopping literally every single truck for an unnecessary safety inspection. Under the guise of public safety and security, though those DPS troopers cannot look into the cargo holds for illegal drugs or human beings who are being trafficked, he's able to maybe score some political points for those who are persuaded by those kinds of theatrics, but he is killing this border economy. He is destroying jobs throughout the state of Texas at a time that we already have way too much inflation. Having those trucks sitting and idling on the bridge, crossing once every 3 days instead of 3 times in 1 day, that's a supply chain problem right here of his making. That's more inflation that the governor of Texas is causing. And when you would go into the grocery store and see higher prices for everything that you want to buy, from bacon to produce to anything else that allows you to feed yourself and your kids, you have one person to blame, and that is Greg Abbott. That's what happens when you see the border as a problem. That's what happens when you see us as a threat. That's what happens when you describe us as something that is going to come and get the rest of the state. And beyond the jobs that it costs, the inflation that it produces, the supply chain problems that it exacerbates, it can also turn deadly. And I gotta tell you this, and it is tough to talk about, but it's important that we all understand. When you have a governor like the one that we have today, who talks about invasions of immigrants who are coming here to get us, when he says, as he did in 2019, we must defend ourselves, people of Texas, and then says this, we must also take matters into our own hands, you better believe that people are listening to him. There was a guy in Allen, Texas, North Texas, who heard the governor and heard the former president using those same words about invasion and infestations and the rapists and the criminals who are coming to get us from Mexico. And he took an AK-47 and he drove it 600 miles to El Paso, Texas. And he walked into a Walmart in my hometown on the 3rd of August in 2019. And he started to shoot and kill and slaughter the people of El Paso, Texas. Anyone who looked to him like an immigrant, maybe because their skin was brown, or the accent with which they spoke, or the fact that they may have been speaking Spanish instead of English, didn't matter to him. He killed them. Grandparents, parents, kids, completely innocent people, all for the reason that he was told that they posed a threat to him and to the state. In the message that he posted on social media before he went in and started killing people in El Paso, he said, I came to repel the invasion of Hispanics who are going to take over the state of Texas. Using the same language the governor, the former president, others in positions of power had used to talk about border communities like this one and mine in my hometown. 23 people dead. And I met some of them before they died, kept alive by doctors and nurses and modern machinery, all manners of pumps and hoses and wires and cables going into their body to try to feed them and keep them alive when their internal organs were shredded by the high impact, high velocity rounds that came out of that AK-47. I spent time with their kids and their spouses and still stay in touch with them right now. And though it's many years later from that day on the 3rd of August, 2019, those wounds are still with us in our community. There are many people who feel because they are Mexican American, they now have a target on their back. I met a young mariachi who said that she was no longer going to perform because she said, I am a symbol of the Mexican culture that those in power are teaching the rest of the people in this state to hate right now. I say all of this to remind you of the cost and consequence of someone who does not understand us on the border, someone who hates us on the border, someone who tries to sow fear and anxiety and hatred among other people across this state and throughout this nation. Not only must we stop that, but we must turn the page and start investing in the border. Instead of $3 billion on activation of the Guard or building this wall or surging DPS troopers to the border, what if we invested in connecting the Rio Grande Valley with the interstate highway system that connects to the rest of the country? What if we made sure that school teachers who are underpaid by more than $5,000 a year in this state get an honest salary for the honest day's work that they do here? What if, in a state that is the least insured in the nation, here we sit and stand in the least insured part of that state, where the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system, where there are people among us who are dying of diabetes. Although insulin has been around for more than 100 years and is incredibly cheap to produce, but for the lack of insurance, they will succumb to that at an early age because we have not formed the political will to do something about it. What if, instead of scaring people or spending money on solutions in search of problems, we invested in healthcare, expanded Medicaid in the state of Texas, made sure anybody who needs to see a doctor or fill a prescription or see a mental health care provider is able to do that right here in the Rio Grande Valley. There is so much promise, so much hope, and so much potential here. You all know that. You are it right now. I see it every time I'm here. As governor, I want to make sure that we unleash that. I'm going to speak with pride about the people of the border. Those who I live with in El Paso, those kids that Amy and I are raising in my hometown, and yes, the people here. And not just those of us who come out tonight, and I'm grateful that you did, but those I've had the chance to visit with in their communities, in their colonias, who say, hey, Beto, lived here in this house on this street for 20 years. It's never been paved. Never had a street light. Every time it rains, it floods right here. I pay my taxes. I live by the rules. I follow the law just like anybody else. Why am I treated like a second-class citizen in my own state and in my own country? Well, when I'm governor, I'm going to make sure that the resources of the 9th largest economy on planet Earth, the state of Texas, flow evenly and equitably to every part of the state, including, importantly, the Rio Grande Valley. You have my commitment on that going forward. And this is what I want you to remember. We're going to make sure that we focus on the things that can actually bring us together and that can improve life for everyone in the state of Texas. Not the culture war stuff, not the things that divide us, not those issues that pit one Texan against another, but things that Republicans and Democrats and independents alike can agree on. And I'll try 3 out on you right now. 1, let's make sure that we are creating better and higher paying jobs for anyone who wants to work in this community or any part of the state. For those who want to enter the medical profession, say you want to be a nurse, right now we ask you to take on tens of thousands of dollars in debt for the privilege of saving our lives and taking care of us when we're sick. How about this? When I'm governor, we're going to wipe clear the debt of those who want to serve their communities in these important frontline positions. We're going to hire thousands more nurses, especially in underserved communities just like this one. We're also going to make sure that if you are a psychiatrist or a psychologist in a mental health care desert like the one that we're in right here. We want to attract or retain you right here in this community. We will also make sure that we wipe clean your debt in exchange for your commitment to serve this community. We're going to do that right here in the Rio Grande Valley. We're going to make sure that we have more energy jobs. And yes, it's important that we protect the oil and gas jobs we have right now, but we must expand them to include more wind and solar, hydrogen, and geothermal. We could be the world's energy leader on renewable energy that frees us from any dependence on foreign oil in any other part of the planet, that allows our grid to actually function every single day of the year, even when the temperature drops in the Rio Grande Valley, and that allows us to confront the challenge of climate before it is too late. Those are high-paying, high-wage, high-skilled jobs, and if we do it right, they'll also be union jobs that have the kind of protections that we want for the workers who are in them. That's the first point. Great job. Point number two, I want to make sure that we have a world-class system of public schools. And yes, it means that we need modern school buildings and the latest in technology. We want to make sure that we have that in every part of the state. But the most important thing, everything else in fact pales in comparison, is that educator. And I mean the classroom teacher, I mean the counselor, I mean the school librarian, I mean the support staff, the cafeteria worker, the school bus driver, everyone who makes public education possible. We're going to make sure that we treat them as the professionals that they really are. We're not going to ask them to work a second job to support their habit of teaching our kids in the classroom. We're going to pay them enough so they only have one job, unlocking the lifelong wealth of learning in those kids. If I were governor right now, we would cancel the STAR test. No more high stakes or high pressure in the lives of these kids or those teachers. And for our retired teachers, those women and men who put a lifetime in the classroom, 30, 40, 50 years, you know, some of them have not had a cost of living adjustment since the year of our Lord, 2004. When I'm governor, there is going to be a cost of living adjustment every single year that keeps pace with inflation going forward. We do that, we will be able to attract and retain the best of the best in our public schools, and we will begin to achieve better than our peer states going forward. Public ed is something that all of us, regardless of party affiliation or part of the state, can agree on. Point number three, and last one. What if we did what every single one of our border states have done so far? Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, most under Republican governors, have expanded Medicaid to make sure that more federal health care dollars flow into our communities. It's $10 billion a year for Texas that we are leaving on the table right now. Not only are we the least insured state, not only are people dying unnecessary deaths and living far sicker than they would otherwise have to be, not only are we not recruiting the physicians and medical providers that we desperately need in our communities, but it's also hitting us where it hurts the most for homeowners and renters, and that's in our property taxes. Because when that person with diabetes, who now has glaucoma, but doesn't have insurance and cannot afford insulin, finally gets so sick, and the suffering becomes too much, and they take themselves to the hospital, that bill might be $50,000, it might be $150,000, it might be a lot more, but because they have no capacity to pay for it, it doesn't mean that the bill disappears, it just means that you pick it up in a higher property tax bill or higher rates if you're lucky enough to have insurance. When we expand Medicaid, when I'm governor, we're also going to lower your property tax bill. What do you think about that? So listen, those three ideas that bring us together, great jobs, world-class schools, the ability to see a doctor, fill a prescription, see a mental health care provider when you need to, that's not so controversial. That doesn't pit us against one another. That's not going to further divide an already very fractured and polarized state. And it is the perfect contrast to the guy who holds the highest position of power right now, who wants us to fight over every issue under the sun right now. Like this craziness about pursuing transgender kids and turning in their parents for child abuse and taking those children from the loving adults who've raised them and are trying to help them navigate one of the toughest things that a child can go through. We want to keep that kid in that house and make sure they receive that love when they most need it and when they're at their most vulnerable. We also want to make sure that we don't distract the people of Texas on things that don't matter, like which kid goes into which bathroom and all that stuff, and focus on the things that do. There are 30,000 kids who are in the foster care system in the state of Texas. And a judge 6 years ago said those kids emerge from foster care more damaged than when they went in because we have so underfunded child protective services. We don't support those caseworkers nearly enough. We haven't hired enough of them. And we've started to privatize the care. We say, hey, look, the state of Texas can't figure this out. You, private provider, you do that. And there won't be the oversight or scrutiny that's necessary. Well, here's the result. 6 years after Greg Abbott was first told about this problem in CPS, the same judge who said those kids go in and leave more damaged than when they went in, she said it's gone from bad to worse. She has found that those kids are sleeping in the CPS offices, under the tables, out in the hallways. She's determined that more than 100 kids in the custody and care of the state of Texas lost their lives just last year in the foster care system. Hundreds more have been trafficked for their bodies, literally rented out while they were in the custody of the state of Texas, all on the watch of the one man who has the power to do something about it. But did he do it? No. He instead decided to focus on transgender children and their parents. It's the same guy who's decided that he's going to attack every single woman in the state of Texas. He may tell you this is about pro-life. Maybe at best it is pro-birth, but what it really is an attack on every woman's right to make her own decisions about her own body, her own health care, and her own future. Y además, he's put a $10,000 bounty on the back of anyone who assists any woman in making her own lawful, constitutionally protected reproductive health care decision. The end result, not only are abortions banned in the state of Texas, not only did we have someone in Starr County indicted for murder, for a miscarriage in this state right now. This is not fiction, this is not The Handmaid's Tale, this is reality in Greg Abbott's Texas. But we now lead the country in the rate of maternal mortality, 3 times as deadly for black women in this state as it is for white women. We lead the nation in the rate of teen pregnancy and repeat teen pregnancy, because not only can you not get an abortion, try getting a cervical cancer screening when the reproductive health care clinics have closed down. Try getting any family planning help whatsoever in the Rio Grande Valley or any other part of Texas. When I'm governor, you can be sure that Texas will guarantee that every woman makes her own health care decisions, decides her own future, makes her own choices. In Greg Abbott's Texas, he refuses to trust the voters with the outcome of the elections. He's literally deciding, choosing who will be allowed to vote going forward. 7 million of our fellow Texans did not vote in 2020. Not because they're not lazy, not because they're lazy or that they don't love our democracy. It's because we have the most restrictive voting laws in the United States of America, and they are targeted at some communities more than they are other communities. There was a 95-year-old veteran who tried to vote in the primary elections that we just had last month. This is a guy who put his life on the line fighting fascism in World War II, defending democracy at home, and had his mail-in ballot rejected not once but 3 times in the state of Texas. If anyone has earned the right to vote, it is that guy, and it is every veteran who swore an oath not to a political party, not to a person in power, but to the Constitution and to this democracy. I'm going to make sure that when we win this and when I'm governor, there is no obstacle in your way, whether you're Republican or Democrat, in freely and fairly casting your ballot and choosing the representative of your choice each and every single time. But if we're going to do this, we've got to get past this man and these divisions and this incompetence, this cruelty, and this corruption that we see from Greg Abbott right now. And the only way that we're going to do it is with one another. There is no cavalry riding from outside to our rescue here in Texas. We must accept that we are the cavalry that Texas needs right now. And so in addition to coming out today, for which I am so grateful, and showing up each and every time that we're here, I need us all to do more. In addition to voting and getting our friends and relatives and classmates and colleagues registered to vote, I need you to sign up with us to make sure that we're knocking on the doors of those 7 million, hundreds of thousands of whom live in the Rio Grande Valley, to invite them into this democracy and ensure that they participate in this next election. And wouldn't this be some profound political and poetic justice if the very people targeted for suppression ended up being the margin of victory when we win this thing on the 8th of November 2022. So, I've got two requests, and then we're going to turn the microphone over to you. Anybody who wants to ask a question, we're going to get as many people into the conversation as possible. Two requests. I mentioned that we're going to have to knock on doors. I'm going to need both volunteers who are willing to knock on doors, and I'm going to need people who will host those volunteer canvases, meaning that you're willing to have people meet at the park in your neighborhood and lead a canvass where you knock on the doors of your neighbors to tell them why this election is so important, in your own words, from your own heart. I'll also need the volunteers who will show up at that canvass to work with you to do that. So the first group of people I need are hosts who are willing to lead door-to-door canvases in your neighborhood. Remember, there is no other way that we're going to win this. We can run the best TV ads in the world, we can raise all the money under the sun, but the most powerful way to impact somebody's decision to vote is to show up at their door. One human being looking right at another human being, eye to eye, face to face. You will remember that before you remember anything else that we will throw at you over the course of this campaign, anything else that Greg Abbott will throw at you over the course of this campaign. Is there anyone here who would be willing to host a canvass in their neighborhood so we could go knock on the doors of your neighbors and bring them into this election and win this thing? Anyone? I've got some hands in the back. I've got a bunch of hands. So how are we going to them? Raise your hand up high. Raise it high. I need my team to go out there and go sign them up. Go, go, go. Keep your hand up. I've got 3 right here. Jason, let's go. Let's go. Irma, Chrissy. The folks, Chrissy, Irma, Amanda, Jason, who are running out to meet you, we do not let them have dinner tonight unless they've signed up a certain number of hosts. So if you could keep your hands up until our volunteers get to you, Cynthia.
I'll keep my eye out, so just keep your hand up. I will go find you. I see one there, and I see some in the back. And if it strikes and you have the feeling, keep your hand up, we will come to you.
All right. Cynthia, do we have ambassadors who can go to them? Or?
Yes, I'm going to collect them all right here.
Okay.
Collect the rest. Everybody that come to me now.
So this is great. We have more hosts than we expected to have, which is wonderful. These are the people who are going to anchor our campuses all across this community. So, now, this is the other request I have. Now I need the volunteers who are going to show up to the canvases that these people are hosting. If you are willing to volunteer, there's an easier process. You don't have to raise your hand. You just need to get on your cell phone and you need to text the word Texas to 20377. If you'll do me a favor, if you're willing to volunteer on one of these canvases, text Texas to 20377. Cynthia, is that it?
That's it, and we have, if you want to host for us, come right over here. If our team hasn't come to you, come right over here and we will get you signed up. Thank you so much.
So we want to thank the hosts. We want to thank everybody who's texted the word Texas to 20377. We will connect you with one of those hosts, and then we'll put you to work, knocking on doors. And here's the beautiful thing. On the night of November 8th, given everything that's at stake, that's on the line, the odds that we're up against, you are going to have a clear conscience. You have done everything within your power to make sure that we win this election, bring it home for the people of Texas, and have something to celebrate on that night. You with me on this, guys? All right. Thank you all so much. Cynthia, let's take some questions.
All right.
If you'll raise your hand, we'll bring you the microphone. You can ask a question or make a comment.
I will come to you, and I'm not even going to make you sign up as a host. I still will take your question.
So I want to help you win for governor, but like this. So I want to help you win for governor, but I'm just a student. But I do want to volunteer at the best a student can do, like maybe just like form a student group or something like that. So how can a student help out, like at this or?
I love this question because when we showed up on college campuses just like this one in 2018, and we did it against the advice of all the political consultants and the smart people in the state of Texas who said, hey Beto, don't waste your time with young people because young people don't vote. We ignored that advice. We showed up anyhow. Young voter turnout in the 2018 election was up 504% from the previous midterm election. So, since you're asking, we would love for you, and I'm going to ask my team, Irma or Amanda or someone on my team, Angela's right there, to sign you up. We would love your help to become a volunteer deputy registrar, which allows you to register voters in Hidalgo County who have just turned 18 or 19 or 20 or older than that for that matter. As long as they're U.S. citizens and otherwise eligible to vote, you can get them onto the rolls. And then we want you to bring in other student leaders to join you in that effort. If you are willing to, we would love for you to captain this effort right here on this campus. Sound good? All right, thank you. I got a thumbs up.
So first and foremost, I actually helped you when you were running for senator. I phoned back thanks to my friend Amanda, who is with you and your team. My question, I'm in the produce business, and it is something that is taking everything by chaos. There's a lot of my fellow people that are in produce. Us, for like example, there's like loads. I'm talking about like 13 trucks that have either fresh vegetables that are, that have to get to the warehouse and everything. We've already talked about it. We see the strikes coming from the drivers in Mexico who have just like had enough of it. And we want to know, like, if you were governor, what would you do? We know it's a political stunt because I've been in the produce business for the past 9 years. Never have inspections been so severe. Even when Greg Abbott was governor before, we've never had this issue. So now it's not only going to cost inflation, it's going to cost, we as growers, as shippers and distributors are asking ourselves, who's going to be responsible for the thousands of dollars lost in this produce? Not only that, but we have a lot of friends of mine who are also in produce. I'm in sales, right? We work off of commission. So who's going to pay us stuff that we cannot sell because it's being donated to the food bank? Just today, we donated 10 pallets of Roma tomato. One pallet of Roma tomato is 1,620 boxes. So you can imagine 10 pallets, or not 10 pallets, 10 loads of tomato that is just being donated to the food bank because we cannot sell it. It's not graded by the USDA as a #1 tomato anymore. So we have to get rid of it. So not only are we losing, the farmers in Mexico are losing, and then the people in sales here are losing, and then everybody else is losing. When you go to the store and you see the prices going up, like on avocados, on tomatoes and all of that, how can we avoid this? Because this just started happening recently, and we know it's a political stunt because he's running for re-election.
That's right. That's exactly why it's happening right now. It doesn't make us safer. It doesn't improve security. It hurts you. It hurts every consumer in the country. It hurts small businesses. I was listening to a produce importer in FAR who told me that she now has U.S. trucks that are coming from Wisconsin and Minnesota to pick up the produce that she imports, but there is nothing in her cold storage facility right now for them to take back. And so you know what the truckers are doing? They're taking these loads to Nogales, 1,200 miles away, a 20-hour drive from where we are in the Rio Grande Valley, and she's having to import the produce from Nogales, Arizona, from within this country to get it to her warehouse to then ship it up to Wisconsin and Minnesota or wherever. So yes, higher prices, more inflation, supply chain problems, and these big businesses are going to move to Arizona. That's why our new campaign slogan is, Greg Abbott is great for the state of Arizona, but he's bad for the people of Texas. So you asked what we're going to do. Not only will we not pull a really idiotic stunt like this one, but I want to invest in our competitiveness. So TxDOT, for example, could invest money right at our ports of entry to make it easier for these trucks to get on the interstate system. We can make sure that we speed inspections while still improving public safety and security, but not impeding the competitiveness of this region or your ability to be a small business owner and to hire the people of this community. It's that difference I described at the outset in terms of how we see the border. He sees you as a threat. I see you as our greatest opportunity, and I want to make sure that we invest in that. Thank you for asking. Appreciate it.
My question is, what would your strategy be to reach more independent and Republican voters, and to let them know that all these bills that are getting passed by these Republican lawmakers are nothing more than manufactured culture war garbage? That's what I want to know.
Great question. You know, the stuff that Greg Abbott is doing, it's hurting a lot of people. I mentioned the kids in foster care. We talked about the parents of transgender kids. We're losing school teachers by the thousands, as he not only underpays them, but he tries to tell them what version of history they're allowed to teach. He wants them to turn in parents. He attacks them as somehow the enemy of the people of Texas instead of literally their greatest saviors in the state of Texas. So in addition to that, he's distracting us from the things that can really bring us together. As he divides us on these issues, we fail to make progress on the big things that I just described, the kind of jobs that we want to create, the kinds of public schools that we want to have, the ability to be healthy and well enough to live to our full potential. So the question is, how do we bring Republicans and independents into this agenda? Well, we do it by going to where they are. And literally for me, that means many of these red and rural communities that are represented by Republicans, and reminding everybody that your public hospital in this rural community that I might be visiting closed down because Greg Abbott refused to expand Medicaid. 24 hospitals in rural Texas have closed down in the last 15 years, more than in any other state. And if you're one of those voters who might be a Republican who lives there, you now have to drive hundreds of miles to see a doctor. You're not going to be able to talk your kids into moving back to that community because there is no hospital there. That's an issue where we can find common ground. Teacher pay and respecting those classroom educators and others who make public education possible, that is common ground with Republicans and independents. These are the kinds of things that can bring us together, not just when I am governor, but importantly, over the course of this campaign. Because as amazing as the Democrats in the room are, we will not win this race with Democrats alone. It's why I hope that we also have independents and Republicans among us right now. We need all of them, and everyone is welcome in this campaign. Thanks for asking the question. I appreciate it. Thank
you. My question had to do with gun reform. So I'm a student here at STC, just like a lot of people here. I'm going for nursing, and I think something that a lot of people can agree on is our generation has become somewhat desensitized towards gun violence. I mean, you hear about shootings all the time, and I know you said with your hometown, I'm sorry about it, what happened with, I mean, people who are very, like super crazy. I don't know, like very, yeah, crazy local. I just want to know what your plans are for gun reform, how we should deal with this problem. Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it. So, look, like most of you who are from Texas, I grew up using guns. For hunting, they were in the home for self-defense. My great uncle Raymond was a sheriff's deputy. In fact, he was the captain at the El Paso County Jail, and he won the Sharpshooter Award. And it was the thing that he was most proud of. And so when my sisters and I first learned to shoot, he was the one who taught us. But he also taught us about the responsibility that comes with owning a firearm. And that is very common here in this room and across the state of Texas. We are a proud gun-owning state, and we own these guns responsibly. What Greg Abbott is doing right now with permitless carry, this is a bill he signed into law, even though police and sheriff's deputies begged him not to, because more cops and law enforcement have been gunned down in the state of Texas than any other state. And allowing anyone to carry a loaded gun in public without a background check or any training whatsoever is going to make it even more dangerous to be a cop or to be a deputy. It's going to make their job even harder protecting the rest of us. Abbott turned his back on law enforcement and did this nonetheless. That is not part of our responsible tradition of gun ownership in the state of Texas. But here are some ideas that we can lead on, and we're going to find Republican and Democratic legislators agree on. One is universal background checks. If you purchase a firearm in the state of Texas, we're going to do a background check to make sure that you're not going to use that firearm against someone else in your life. It makes common sense. Most other states have done that. It's what the rest of the civilized world understands. We've got to get with the program here in the state of Texas. Number two, and I learned this one from listening to the survivors of the Santa Fe High School shooting, where unfortunately these kids in high school were killed because another student got his hands on his parents' gun. Safe storage laws say that if you have someone under a certain age in the house, you got to keep that gun locked up and secured so that that young person cannot get their hands on it and use it to kill themselves or to kill someone else in their life. That makes a lot of sense. And the third one is an extreme risk protection order. So this is where if someone is saying, hey, I want to shoot or harm the people at my workplace or in my community or at my school, and they do have a firearm, there is a deliberate process to make sure that we protect the public by separating them from that firearm for a little while until we are assured that they are no longer a danger to themselves or other people. These are common sense, common ground solutions that most people in the state of Texas can get behind. All we're missing right now is the political will to get it done. If we do, that allows us to protect the Second Amendment and also protect the lives of the people of Texas. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it.
Beto, primero te quiero agradecer, todos hablan español aquí me imagino, que has hecho un sacrificio muy grande con tu familia por defender a nosotros, a los morenos. Yo no veo güeros aquí. I don't see any blondes anymore, but I don't see any blondes in the state of Texas. It's your time, people. You have to rise up to the occasion. Beto is doing it for us. Sir, the first time I went to El Paso was in 1978 as a manager of a GM plant in Matamoros. When I came back home, I told my parents, they asked me, in Matamoros, I'm from Matamoros. They asked me, how did you see El Paso? I mentioned, I thought it was a Houston on the border. Okay, I went to the Small Garcin restaurant, if I recall, a nice restaurant out there. This is the problem, people. We're not being taken care of because we're not standing on our own feet. Somos mexicanos y tenemos que luchar through education. The other thing that I'm very upset about, Beto, seriously, is the FAR bridge. We had 8 years or more when Presidente Calderón announced to the world that he was building a bridge through the Baluarte River, one of the longest bridges, suspended bridges in the world. We had 8 years or more to prepare for that FAR bridge to be ready to receive all those trucks that are feeding our supermarkets. I like my strawberries, I like my moras to be fresh, you know, and everything. That's when they switched from Nogales, Arizona to our little town of FAR, Texas, okay? And this is when you saw all those refrigerator warehouses pop up like mushrooms. You people need to get up and fight. You need to do it consciously. You need to do it smartly. Beto is doing a great sacrifice. I've never met him, Don't believe that I'm doing this for a reason. But I'm very upset of what is happening at the Fort Bridge right now. That has to be on the news cycle all over the world. We fought, we started free trade, and now we're stopping it for some stupidity of somebody who does not want to live and go home and let somebody else lead the state the way it should be, to fight for you. Beto, gracias.
Thank you, sir. And to the gentleman's point, you know, when we drove in this morning from Laredo, we went to a cold storage facility in Pharr, Texas, not too far from the Pharr Reynosa Bridge, to bring the press of the Rio Grande Valley and also the state press and even the national press cover this press conference. We had a customs broker and we had a trucking company CEO talk about what this is doing to the community, the jobs that it is killing, the small businesses that are going to go away, the big businesses that are moving back to Arizona and away from Texas. I'm going to make sure that I fight for this community with everything I have. I'm not waiting until we win this election and I serve you as our governor. I am doing it right now. I'm fighting for you and I am with you, and I thank you for being here and reminding us of that. Thank you. Gracias.
I've been down here for 18 years. This is my community now. I came down here from Georgia to be a nurse in the hospital delivering babies in this community. This is my home. This is the place I love. Sorry, I'm getting a little verklempt here. Because I do deliver babies and because I am a nurse, many things that you've said this evening have really echoed within my heart. Number one, thank you so much for talking about investing in my community here. Number two, thank you for talking about wanting to get more nurses here in our state, especially in the communities like down here where we need more. Number three, thank you for bringing up the hateful SB 8 law and what impact it has on women down here, and that poor woman over in Starr County that spent the weekend in jail just because she confided to her healthcare workers that she had tried to self-induce her abortion because she didn't feel like she had any other choice because she didn't want someone else to get jailed over it. Someone there at the hospital felt that they were compelled to have to report her, and she spent the weekend in jail over something she should have never been jailed over. Now, that all being said, now her name's in the papers. It's made national. You know, her privacy is irrevocably breached. And I know it takes more than just a governor that has his head and his heart in the right place to repeal these kind of laws. But, I mean, what can we do to fight this?
Let's do our best to find the common ground among us. You know, I got a question about how do we bring Republican and independent voters in on this issue of choice. And really, I think it goes beyond choice and pro-life. This is really about power and certain people wanting to have power over women and their choices and their future and their health care in the state of Texas. But when I talk to my mom, who I may not see eye to eye on this, you know, I was raised very Catholic. She is as devout as they come. And we may not agree on every part of this, but when I remind her about the crisis in maternal mortality in this state, because we've closed down all these reproductive health care clinics, the rates of teen pregnancy and repeat teen pregnancy, we lead the nation in that. She says, hey, Bethel, well, that's not good. That's not what we want out of this. And I say, Mom, you're right. So we've got to make sure that we find some common ground on this. And we may not get every single thing we want right away, but we have to do better for the people of the state, and in particular, the women of this state who are under attack, unlike almost any other place, anywhere in the developed world. The irony is probably not lost on you that Mexico has begun to move in the other direction. Just a few years ago in Mexico, if you had an abortion, you would be arrested. If you had a miscarriage, you could be arrested in Mexico. Mexico is now legalizing choice in that country as Texas is criminalizing it unconstitutionally right now. We've got to make sure that we do not judge anyone who feels differently than we do. These are strongly, personally held beliefs. We must respect one another in that regard and then seek that common ground. And as you just did, with kindness and compassion and empathy. We share stories like the one of the woman who spent the weekend in jail after a very traumatic experience for her. Nobody wants that for her. I mean, almost nobody wants that for her. I certainly don't. You don't. And I bet you most Republicans don't as well. So let's move forward in that way, because winning is important. That much we agree on. But after we win, we've actually got to get these things done. And the only way we do it is by building some common ground. And yes, that means talking to, listening to, and working with Republicans as well as Democrats. Thanks for asking.
Okay, we're to your right.
Thank you for visiting the talent, Mr. O'Rourke. I'm student body president here, and I see the picture that Governor Abbott is the painting of the border. It's a battlefield, and we're getting invaded. When, as someone from the community, the border community, you know that's not the truth. Recently, Dr. Solis and the board of trustees reached out to the Reynosa University to try to create opportunities. We see the border as our nosy neighbor. Sometimes they get on our nerves, but we'd rather have nobody else there because we're there to help each other out. So I appreciate that you're from El Paso and can appreciate what the valley is like. So my question, students here didn't go to college to party. They're here because they're looking to make a better opportunity for themselves. Some of them are single parents trying to make a better opportunities for their family. Some students are now the only breadwinner in their family because their parents got laid off. Again, they're trying to make a better opportunity for their families. So we're all just, and I hate to use this cliche, we're not looking for a handout, we're looking for a handout. You mentioned some of the things you'll do once we clearly proclaim you as our governor. Can you review some of those things that we as students at STC can bank on and say, this is why Beto is our man?
Yes.
Thank you.
You got it. You got it. Thank you. I love this. So, beyond the benefit that we're interested in for the students here and students in higher education throughout the state of Texas, I want to begin with why it's important for all of us, no matter who we are. There are more people laboring, working under a living wage in Texas than in any other state. That means, the minimum wage here is $7.25. That means they're working not one job, but two jobs, working not one shift, but maybe three. That means they're on public assistance. That means they're sleeping on their parents' couch or in a friend's basement or out in the streets or in a shelter tonight, even though they are working full-time. The best, clearest way until we're able to raise these minimum wages and ensure more workplace conditions and elevate the role of unions and the right to organize in the state of Texas is to make sure that we have the skills to compete for those living wage jobs. South Texas College is one of the best examples in not just this state, but in the United States of America for how to do that. When these students complete their course of education, when they have the necessary certifications and credentials that they need, not only are they earning that living wage job, and that's great for them, and we love that, they're better able to shoulder their fair share of the burden, so everyone else's load is a little bit lighter. But then there's this, and I've heard this from so many students at colleges just like this one. They not only have a job, but they have a career. And they have purpose when they wake up in the morning. They know they're going to a place that they are going to make better by their very presence. They have something that excites them about being alive and where they work and who it is that they work with right now. When you're not working 2 or 3 jobs, you have the luxury to feel that and work that way and contribute even more back to your community. So what can we specifically do? I mentioned a few things. If you want to go into nursing, for example, or other in-demand professions like teaching, I want to make sure that cost is not an object, that we clear your path so that you don't take on debt, or if you're working in one of those professions, we wipe clean the debt that you've already taken on. But in addition, y además, I want to make sure that we do this. We are investing in K through 12 education right now in Texas. We need to invest more in those grades, but I want to extend it on either end. I want to make sure that there is full-day pre-K in the state of Texas for every kid, and that there is universal community college and associate's degrees for anybody who wants one. We're going to invest in the people of Texas and their ability to get ahead. And some may say, hey, look, that's an expensive proposition, and maybe it is, but it's a whole lot less expensive than failing to invest in people and in their education. Because when we fail to do that, we end up carrying so many of them, not because they're lazy, not because they don't want to work hard, but because they don't have the education, the credentials, and the skills. We're going to make that happen, and this institution is the example that we're going to use. Thank you for being here, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. O'Rourke, first of all, shout out to Mr. Alan Contreras, Professor Contreras, for bringing us out here. My question is, you kind of hit it at the end there with your last response. I'm all, everybody's all about it, free education and all that, but how do you plan to get the money for that? It's got to come from somewhere, and you're planning on taking away or lowering property taxes. So, also, your stance on medical marijuana.
Yeah. Thank you for asking the question. You didn't plan this, but these two things are very much connected. So right now, all of us together, we are the state of Texas. We're the taxpayers who pay property taxes and sales taxes, and through the natural resource wealth, the budget for the state of Texas. We're paying $500 million a year to lock up people for marijuana. That's possession of a substance that is legal in most other states right now. We're locking up veterans who came back from Vietnam with post-traumatic stress disorder, who could be legally prescribed an opioid at the VA to treat that, but who don't want to receive it because they may become addicted to it and they may die from it. But if they want to smoke weed to address their symptoms and make sure that life is a little bit more livable, they are a criminal in the eyes of the law. And in a country that locks up more people than any other nation on the planet, as bad as China and Russia and North Korea are, we lock up more of our own in the United States of America than they do. And this state, Texas, locks up more than any other state in the union. And so many are behind bars for nonviolent drug offenses. And I got to tell you this, Anglos, Mexican Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, all use marijuana at the same rate, but disproportionately black and brown Texans are the ones who are stopped and frisked and arrested and incarcerated, and upon release have to check a box on every employment application form saying that they have a conviction, are denied student loans because of that conviction to be able to attend higher education. So this is unfair, it's unwise, and it's deeply expensive, and we're also losing out on another $500 million of revenue if we were to tax the controlled and regulated sale of marijuana. That's why, as governor, I'm going to make sure we legalize marijuana in the state of Texas, bring in $1 billion a year that we can invest in public education or higher education. If we require corporations to pay their fair share of property taxes, we're missing out on about $5 to $6 billion a year. We put that into the mix. There are many other ways that the 9th largest economy on the planet can fund priorities like education. I'm going to make sure that we find them. Thank you for asking.
All right. Let's get back. This is going to be our last question.
Thank you, Cynthia.
My question is, what's your stand on Operation Lone Star, and will you keep it?
So Operation Lone Star is part of this mess that everyone has been referring to. The trucks that are stopped on the border, that are bringing in the trade right here, the activation of 10,000 members of the National Guard who are taken from their families and their communities for a 1-year deployment. 4 of those Guard members have taken their own lives. 2 of those Guard members have died in accidental deaths. None of them need to be on the border right now. We must return them to our communities. These DPS troopers, we are grateful for their service. They have very tough jobs, but I want to make sure that they're not just on the roads and highways of South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley and border communities, but I want to make sure that they're on the highways and roads in North Texas and the Panhandle, East Texas as well. We've had more highway traffic fatalities and accidents in Texas this last year than in any year since 1980. That may have something to do with all these DPS troopers concentrated along the border as part of Operation Lone Star. And I don't need to tell you, it doesn't matter how high you build the wall, how many guardsmen or DPS troopers or Border Patrol agents you have on the border, if someone has no choice to protect their kids but to flee 2,000 miles from Central America and seek refuge and asylum in the one place that can keep them safe, they are going to try to do that. I would try to do that if it was the only way to keep my kids alive. We're not going to meet this problem at the border successfully, Operation Lone Star or anything else. We need fundamental, comprehensive immigration reform in this country. We need to address the issues in the home countries from which these people are fleeing right now. We need to assert some leadership in the hemisphere, in the United States, and we need to lead that effort right here in the state of Texas. If we do that, there is no more vilifying, demonizing the border, no more stoking fear about those who are coming here. We can start to live our values with laws that reflect our reality. So no more Operation Lone Star when we win this, and we're going to have a humane border policy that keeps our communities safe going forward. Thank you all so much for coming out here today. We're going to stick around for a little while for anybody who wants to take a picture. Les agradezco. Thank you very, very much. Adios. Thank you all.